truly appreciate people coming out to participate in this event. Really, it's the community that matters. You know, what we talk about up front is just kind of a helpful distraction in between the opportunities to discuss and have the dialogue. So this is why we run this. My name is Kurt Sorensen. I'm the founder of DIGON Systems. We are a creative partner with CERL, so we have a PLA which allows us to host, train, distribute, builder, and we've been doing a lot of training classes, built applications around this. We don't do direct facility assessments, just lots of stuff around it. But part of what we've found is important to this community is just gathering. So for the past 4 years, we've helped participate in the summit, and I believe CERL is going to also look to have another DC event in the future. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The energy of getting in the same space starting to get more normal already. That was awesome. I think yesterday everybody was so hyped up to be in the same space and physically interact. Welcome back. This is just kind of a quick agenda review, and want to talk a little bit. Yesterday we were able to complete the training. Previous year we split the training into 2 days, or sorry, 2 different rooms. And we got some feedback that people wanted to listen to all sessions, so we kind of tightened the agenda a little bit and brought everybody back to the same space. Wanted to see, from a audience perspective, would you rather the split and longer time, or do you like having everybody in the same space at the same time? Any? Yes. I like it. Same space? Okay. So even though the boot camp is something that there's a lot of people in the room that have already been in Builder a lot of years. You've heard it before. It was still helpful enough to be in the same space and just follow along with everybody else? Okay. For those that did sign up for that, we have certificates in the back. So for those that like to have recognition of your time in training, and for professional engineer continuing education credits, if you didn't grab it yesterday, there's in the back. And if you didn't sign up but participated in the training anyways, then reach out to info@digonsystems.com and we'll send you a PDF. For the next 2 days, today we're going to start with kind of going through the most recent Builder release at 3.6. We're also going to have an opportunity to showcase some of the virtual events that CERL put on, in October. I think when I talked to Matt last, he said, we'd love to be there, but there's a lot of material already available for some of the topics we wanted to talk about. So we're just pulling in that resource. We're going to have a panel discussion on how the different groups handled the COVID, lockdown and lack of travel and new restrictions. The Air Force is going to talk about their program with data quality. I'm going to shamelessly rip off a ton of CERL material to create an ESMS update and share with you what's going on. And then the Air Force has been kind enough to also kind of give their updates on utilities and fuel. And then we're going to kind of wrap up the presentation with just an update on some of the resources that you may not know are available on the CERL site with training materials, videos, and that sort of stuff. Kind of make sure that in this community of sharing, if there's something that's useful for everybody, you can get it.
Can you unmute me? We're having an audio issue with these folks online.
So, while I was not going to host a summit without an in-person opportunity to get in the same room, because I think the community is important to get the opportunity to talk and meet face-to-face, I can say that we are excited about how many people are online, which is why I need to unmute Paul so he can share the video. I think last count we had 200. There he is.
Some people were waiting for an hour.
What's that?
Some people were waiting for an hour because they were on the wrong time.
Oh. Yes. Yeah, I think when we put out the agenda, there was a lot of assumed East Coast time, so people were in the meeting at like 6 a.m. yesterday. It's like, yeah, we're not starting for a few hours yet. And then the early evening, we do have a happy hour social. So we're going to actually have the beer cart set up, and it's for 1 hour. Have an opportunity to just sit back and relax and have a beverage on us. Tomorrow, there's another panel on using data. Back to all right, you've done your assessment. Now what? The U.S. Coast Guard is going to share an opportunity to kind of go through their program update. We have Yusuf from the National Nuclear Security Administration going to share how he's built out a CMMS integration with Builder. And then the afternoon after lunch, we're going to have direct ratings and service life. We touched on it just a little bit yesterday, but how a early direct rating in something's design life can really shift the future planning of the builder's design life. And then we're going to wrap up the day with functionality. A lot of people have kind of heard about it, and this is going to be a little bit more technical. If you want to build out your own functionality question set, here's how to do it. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. It sounds kind of cheesy, but we are really focused on keeping this a free event as long as humanly possible. Last year we got feedback that, hey, it would be great if we could have room blocks and try to get government rates and have more food and beverage, and all that infrastructure takes resources, and as a small company we couldn't do that alone. So we do thank Cardno, Tetra Tech, and Wood for their sponsorship, because without them this can't happen. So thank you guys. If anybody needs to participate, and the agenda is on the web, so even if it's just an hour, if you think there's one meeting that they might benefit from, don't hesitate to just send out the meeting link to somebody. They don't need to go through a complicated registration process. And the safety minute, I know we're in Texas and everybody has, it's really not an issue, but the San Antonio cases are rising. I kind of kept a touch base on what's going on in the dashboards. We did have some people that were planning to travel in that were told at last minute, you can't because of what's going on in the country. So please respect other people's space, and only get in the same room if you're healthy. We're adults here and we care about this community, so if you have a cough or a fever, please participate from your distance of your room. And wash hands. We have sanitation cycles in the back and bathrooms for anybody that needs it. Yesterday there was already a question of, will these slides be available? The answer is yes. So both Paul and my training slides will be posted in the Builder Summit website and for the resources. Everybody that's able to, we're going to be able to push their material onto that environment. We are taking camera recordings for the event. We started recording on WebEx as well. So as much as possible, we're going to make this available to the community, and maybe through YouTube links or the rest. So keep an eye out. If you missed something, you weren't able to show up to the training, maybe you got stuck in an airport and had to sleep on the floor, it's not lost for good. I know that this past year has been different than most. The application hasn't been through as many changes. The groups haven't done as many trips. And so we didn't get as many solicitations for materials as in past years. So keep an eye out. Next year, we're going to be doing the same call for presenters. And really, especially if you lead a agency that's using this and you have something to share, this is the community that can allow somebody else to take what you've done and implement it in their organization. So look for opportunities to come up, and even if it's a 15 to 20 minute brief, we'd love to have a more diverse speaker set. info@digonsystems.com is managed by Kelly in the back, who's been incredible, allowed this event to go off as well as it has. She'll be monitoring that, and we'll make improvements for next year. Bigger, better, moving forward. Anything, questions on the web, or are we all good?
Good.
All right. One of the items you'll notice on the agenda is an increased networking time. We want to make sure you all have an opportunity to, not shake hands or smile at each other. So we have a fairly full agenda as far as talking points, but I expect that a lot of them will close early and take advantage of the time to get out in the lobby and shake a hand. Well, let's start with this. So I wanted to open up with the most recent release from CERL. 3.6 is where we're currently at, and different, I've seen 3.6.3 mentioned, 3.6.4, so there might be slight variations depending upon what you're running. Is anybody not able yet to look into their server and see if they're on 3.6, or has pretty much everybody gotten to that upgrade path? The IC is special in so many ways. You're 3.4?
Yeah, we're trying to get to 3.5.
Yeah. Well, for those that have an active server, I recommend you look in and see if you can see these capabilities and feature sets that have been added. If you don't, remember your my.buildersoftware.net that was used for the training is 3.6. So if you want to explore a feature, please do so. Attributes is the big one. I'm going to spend the majority of the time talking about that and actually go through a walkthrough of how to manage add attributes. Functionality module, the ability to kind of tweak your own questions, tweak your own scoring, all within the website itself, and no longer need Internet Explorer. Silverlight has been removed completely. So from a security perspective and just an IT management, not trying to tell people to use a deprecated unsecure browser is awesome. We're going to go through some section updates. I'm going to scan over the bug fixes and API fixes, mostly because I don't think that anybody wants to read 10-point font from 100 feet away. The reason that I am including them on the slides, even though it breaks my rule of no more than 10 words, is that it's able to be referred to back after this presentation. So if you want to actually read them, there's all the links and the descriptions included. I do want to mention that scenarios have become a bit more fragile in this newest release. There is now a requirement that if any of your cost catalog elements like paint have a no cost, your scenarios will not run. So it is not a problem with the code, it's not a problem with your specific building data, it's just a catalog issue that your host should be able to fix. So just make sure to scan your database. If it has any null values, that'll hard stop it.
Now, to clarify, you mean no value assigned, not value of 0, correct?
Correct. So a zero cost is different than a null. That means it's just a missing cost record in the database. And when you start up the scenario, it runs through your catalog, and even things that aren't selected are pulled in, and it will freeze up. So the big one, the one I want to talk the most about, is attributes. DIGON systems, we focus heavily on data integration, and this is something that's exciting for us because it's the first time that within Builder you can create kind of your own custom data fields. Reporting capabilities, integration, there's a lot of opportunities here for some fun tools. So these are inventory attributes that you see you can assign to any level of the organization. So while I have a screenshot, let's actually log in. So right at the top, you might notice that there is a new tab called Organization Attributes. I don't think that that's as useful. But here, every level down the inventory side, you have attributes. Site attributes can be and this could be maybe corn. I have now added an admin attribute that says, this site, this program that's used is corn research. Maybe it's seed research, maybe it's infectious disease or whatever else. This could be something that is the primary need or mission for that site. And now that I've added that once to one site, I can go back and see program is still here. I can assign this to this next site and now edit the attribute. Maybe and now you have in the database a record that site 001 is dedicated to corn research in my site attributes, and site 002 is dedicated to apples. There is no restriction on data type. This could be a number, it could be a name, but when you've added it, it's available to every site within that same server.
Question from chat.
Yes?
Are there any section detail inventory attributes?
They're a section. So as far as the hierarchy of builder, when you hit that plus button, the section is the lowest piece that you can add. You saw me automatically go to the admin attributes because I wanted to add it at both sites. If you have a one-time only attribute that maybe, it's hard for me to think because I'm so data consistency minded, but if you have a one-time event that you just want to say storm damage, I just want to throw in an attribute one time that this site has suffered from storm damage that I need to go back and reassess it or whatever. You can create that one time for one site and then it's not available elsewhere. So back into Builder, if I go back to our training site, I've created a record, I've named it storm date, saved it as a date timestamp, and now if I go into my site here, it's not looking for me to fill in that same information for that second site. So your active attributes are one-time use only, just for that piece of inventory. Your admin managed ones would be something that you would want consistently for every site, every organization, every complex, building, system, component, or section. Joe.
Will there be reporting capability with this?
So this is in the database. When you store it, there is a table now that you have an attribute name and an attribute value. That is available to custom reports. I have not seen any reports designed to pull this out because we need to have a client that says, I want to use this for a consistent manner in this way. But absolutely.
So far, there are no custom reports that have been created to pick this up.
Correct. And it is a bit more complicated than a traditional report. He asked, is there any existing custom reports that use these attributes? And the answer is no, that I am aware of. But know that it's a little bit more complicated because it's meant to be dynamically created. You can create as many attributes as you'd like as the user, which means that a report design is complicated because it has to flex. So, for the slide deck, for the people that need to be able to kind of review this and share this after the fact, remember that to create an admin one, first hit it once at the tier that you want, assign the value, and then once you create it once, it's always available to every other level of that same hierarchy. So our program attribute at the site level is not available at the building level. We've created different ones at the building, like maybe a geolocation. From a outside perspective, we talk a lot about storytelling and using builder data to make a compelling argument for what you need. And GIS is one of the more powerful tools to be able to do so. If you can make a pretty picture and have it color-coded, that's awesome. So my immediate mind went to, I've always wanted builder to be able to, at least for the building level, put a dot on the map. And then make that dot bigger or smaller based upon the building value, PRV, and then color code that building based upon the condition, or FCI or something. But with this new geolocation attribute, if you have the data in Esri, you can talk to somebody that has access to your server, bulk load it, and then when you pull out a custom report, feed it into some display engine, Power BI, Esri, Tableau, and make that story more compelling. On the usages, this is just kind of brainstorming within the team. You guys are the experts as far as what have you wanted in Builder that you couldn't put there before? I'd be interested in what your ideas are, but Joe, you want to jump in?
Well, besides GIS capability, the other thing that jumped out to me was some of us have been in a situation where another real property data source overloads your real property information. So yesterday when we were showing data, I think Paul, the floor count's being wrong. Oftentimes the floor count's being wrong in Builder, not a result of Builder. It's because real property has errors and they're top loading every quarter error data that contains errors. And then you also have the situation where your square footages that real property has that they overload with don't necessarily square with what we calculate in Builder. So it's either error prone or just some of our calculations in Builder, the gross square footages don't always match the real property value. Anyway, that being said, it's possible that we could use this to, in my opinion, it's always been a curse that we didn't have our own field for our own calculated Builder square footages and our own value for our Builder verified floor count, and this would do that for us. And then we could also point out then to real property, hey, you got an error in your database, and here's a report that shows it once we have a report that.
Yeah, and that goes back to the question yesterday is Builder a database of record? And for most fields, most data points, real property wins. But if you actually have the opportunity to go out there and update the field, maybe you can store it temporarily here, just long enough for you to go back to real property. And then once you fix that, then just remove that attribute. So we're getting hands-ish.
What I would like to see is a validation button. We don't have a validation when we finish the building, the assessment, and the QA has been done. There's no way to validate that this data is ready.
At what level would you want to say, so comment from the audience was they would like to see a QA status field where they can confirm that it's been complete and is ready for review or something along that workflow path. The one caution I will put, this is available to anybody that has read-write permissions in the inventory. So on the data control perspective, if it's a contractual milestone, just guard the data as far as permissions, because somebody can change the status. If they want it to be ready, but the COR is the only person that has that specific responsibility, just be careful how that's handled. But yes, I think, and this is one of my ideas here, assessment status at the organization. If you have a small suborg or a site, and you're like, this is ready. Another.
Sorry about that. I'm going to speak minor blasphemy here and say, for instance, a small garrison in the Army is probably not going to have a lot of time or horsepower to generate a KBI inspection, process that, and figure out how they want to break out their 20% every year. The attribute field seems like a real good way to assign, that 20% annual inspection, or inspected every 5 years. You just assign a number 1 through 5 to each of your buildings as an attribute, and away you go.
Yeah, it could be randomized or it could be strategic zones of the facility, but absolutely. I think in Department of Energy, their real property record requires a building last inspected date. And in Builder, you only inspect sections. So what do you use for that date of last inspected? Well, if I inspect one building, one section in 1 million square feet, is that a whole building reinspection? Probably not. So an attribute of I finished an inspection on this date or plan for my next 5 year on this date could absolutely be a valuable use for an attribute, because then you can pull a report before the next contract action comes to say, what is my scope for the next 2 years? This is this statement of work, this is that statement of work, and put out a plan and keep managing that update. It's there. Not blasphemy at all. At times you might even want to remember who or what contract was used for the assessment. So if you have a site that was assessed back in January of '05 and you want to put in a contract number just to be able to kind of go back to see what their process is, what their costs were, or anything, documents, lessons learned, maybe a contract number would be valuable. I like the idea of approved. This site has been stamped as ready for reporting. I know that there have been times where people have pulled data, presented it to leadership, and then 2 levels down, they're like, wait, you used what? That's nowhere near ready for you to use for that type of a report. Check with me first, and now you can actually say, this has been blessed for the next 4 years. At the facility, again, my thought is latitude, longitude. I've seen with some really powerful IWIMS programs, the idea of dependency. This building is linked to support this hospital. So while the generator may not have a big emission dependency index, the hospital does. It's separate real property, but it has a dependency of another real property asset. You might want to create some visibility that this is a cluster, not just an isolated standing on an island type structure. Use, is this a seed research? Is this a tritium research? Is this a, I think it might be fun to be able to look at your condition across multiple sites or multiple regions of the country and say, hey, everything that is a data center use or has, missions, critical servers in it, here my condition spans across multiple sites. Occupancy load is a big one that's been talked about in functionality for time, to say, do we have a configuration problem? Do we have an occupancy load problem? Maybe even energy. But is there any other ideas from kind of organization, site, or building that you don't see that would be helpful?
I think you are working in the Q rating for the ISI, the mission capability of the building's failing for the mission, not the building.
Yeah, so you're saying this is kind of Army specific, but last ISR rating and last ISR date would be helpful.
Mission rating too, the mission, because this, we are rating the building for the building function, not if the mission, if the building is optimal for the mission.
I like it. And if you add it in the admin, remember that it's available to every building in this entire server. So it's not site-specific, organization-specific. It's install wide.
Kurt, question from the chat. Does CERL plan to expose the new attribute fields to the Builder API? And do they plan to make it available as a policy attribute for use in scenarios? If so, when?
I feel like they got the slides ahead of time. That has been already asked for. It's already been a feature request. I have changed my style of interaction and not predict future events from CERL, but I believe that it would be on a natural horizon for a future update. But we'll get to that. Any other great ideas about how to use attributes across your organization, sites, or buildings? At the system level, I hear a lot about, hey, we need an HVAC upgrade. It's inefficient. You may have a whole project dedicated to just your electrical. So a project number, a project cost could be something where, hey, you don't execute a project with just changing out the lights in a building. If you're going to do that, it's going to be a whole interior finish upgrade. You might put that same project number across 57 different sections. Maintenance grouping. Your VAVs with your air handling unit might be maintained as a set, and so when you do a preventative maintenance, you want to say, hey, pull me all my section data for this maintenance ID. Is that facility, is that section in a secure location? I know section details has a potential for room number, but never at the section level, so you could bump it up one level and just use an attribute. Hazardous material has been something that I've heard often is used, so if I think there's asbestos in this caulking or in this tile, the tile is red, well, you're kind of mixing functional issue with a condition issue, and I understand why, but maybe there's a better place to put a potential hazardous material concern or other more functional type elements into your inventory. This does not change with an inspection. This is not tied to life cycle. It is just an extra data field that you get to attach in your inventory. So this is a new feature set. Obviously, when I see something, I get excited and I have all this gumption about how I'm going to use it, and then I find, oh, well, we need a little bit further down the road. It is not currently available to the API. So for those that are not more technical centric, application programming interface is something that allows another computer to ask the computer directly a question. And we have a CMMS kind of link where you can say, what's the condition of this building? And the API will say, it's an 83. Add this section, okay, and have that conversation back and forth. With things like a GIS implementation where you could have a API live data feed to your builder account, sadly, that attributes are not available to the API. Similar to reports, I do also understand that it's a bit more complicated because your API endpoints need to be flexible so that anybody that adds another one is now also available to the API. It's not rigid like all the other database fields. Right now, there is some quirkiness about editing an admin field after it's created. So that defect has been reported. I'm sure that that'll be fixed. A big one that I would like to see, and I've already heard that is on the plan, is to move the admin managed attributes to the library. So I mentioned that everybody with read-write permissions in inventory can change or create an admin managed attribute. that kind of, that's everybody with permissions to do things in Builder. I would like to see all your admin elements moved up to your library. So Builder has the capability for you to change costs, inflation, service life, components importance, add cost modifiers, change your functionality module in a controlled master planner only space of Builder. Admin manage attributes seem like a natural thing for this master planner only, because if somebody puts an attribute called floor, and another one says FL, and the other one says FLR, you could have this list of attributes growing without regimented control. And then my next one is work configuration. If I have something like this is a secure section, or this is tied to my infectious disease research program, and we need to prioritize all work due to infectious disease for the next 5 years because of what we've seen changing. Right now in my work configuration of generating work or prioritizing work, I cannot use attributes to prioritize things of certain attributes, and I cannot say set a different standard based upon the lat log. So that would be something that would improve the power of the capability. Yes?
Question from chat. Can attributes be synced with external CMMS system data fields?
If you can extract the data in a custom report, you just need to be able to have a CMMS that can import that data. So if you keep that under tight control and make sure to audit the attribute fields that are created and used and how they're assigned, then you just have to make sure that the input, now it's not automated because it's not available to the API, but integration can be Joe sits at a computer and integrates it by hand, or it can be upload a file and batch integration manually, or it can be, you know, lots of different options. Well, any questions or comments about attributes before we take the next one? I think that's the most interesting new feature. It was just announced in 3.6. We're going to be covering functionality on day 3 as far as how to use modules, but I did want to mention briefly that this is the last piece of the Internet Explorer dependency that has been removed. So Silverlight is no longer required, and if you've ever used the older versions of Builder, this module management has been moved to a primary interface. Am I still logged in? Haha. So most of what people use Builder for is condition and life cycle, but there's a whole nother world of functional issues that you get to say, I want to look at my facility and I want to see if it is functionally working for my mission. And you can look at things like ADA, and you can look at things like, is it on a floodplain? Is it attractive? You know, not life cycle elements. Every time you answer one of these questions, it drops points off your functionality score. But users have not been able to change how those rules are set before, and now you can. So in your library of modules, that same list of available functionality assessment question sets are now able for you to modify. So if you say, I don't really care about easy access to and from my building, I want to remove that from my question set, it's as easy as a checkbox. And of course a save. But I don't want to jump in too far because we're going to cover that later. Yesterday we spent a long time in scenarios because that was also an area of improvement and a lot of bug fixes. So no longer needing Silverlight, there was kind of a old scenarios and then a new scenarios. It's all been kind of tidied up and bundled into just management. So it's as far as I'm concerned, completely functional and working. I've not seen a systematic problem with the scenarios in 3.6, which is awesome, because when you do that much math and calculation, it is a system that is fragile. For section display, you can have a partial section quantity. Typically, you're used to linear feet, gross square feet, each as your units of measure. For those people that have added to their catalog things like linear miles of roads, it's not enough to say I have 1 or 2 miles. Sometimes you need to say I have 1.5 miles of roads, because the costs just don't break down easily into whole numbers. So you can set by your catalog element something that's allowed to be a partial, and then that can display in Builder. The last area I want to talk about for sections is the alternate ID. This is available to the API. So if I go back into my inventory, you have an alternate ID field. For people that have been used to doing kind of batch updates or exports out of Builder, you might be familiar with the Builder GUID, that 32-character, really long string. So in Builder, everything has a unique ID. It's just hidden from you. Here you can say, this is Maximo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 7, 6. Now, for this section, if you have a badge or an ID that is tied to a CMMS, you can use your alternate ID field to systematically store that at the section level. Previously, you could only do so at the section detail with this ID number. So for people that group multiple pieces of equipment in a single section, it makes sense to continue to use your ID number. Because you can have multiple equipment records attached to the same section. But if you are a one equipment in my managed CMMS preventative maintenance program to one section, it's a little easier now to just use that field and not have to create a details record. This doesn't have to be used for CMMS integration. It could be project ID. It could be, you name it, room number if you want. Just know that there is an alternate ID available that is meant to be kind of unique just to that section. Has anybody started to explore using section current status in Builder in any of their scopes or programs? This is a 3.5 feature that was added, and I'm still interested to see if anybody's using it. There was a question yesterday in the chat of, how do I add a section that's missing? We have a blast door that should be on that building that isn't. I want to create a work order in Builder to say there's something missing. Should I just make it red minus? And I said, sure, you can do that, but you can also then say, as a status, that section is missing. And that allows you to identify problems and work requirements for sections that don't even exist. So nobody's using it yet, but it's available. Question?
We were looking at functionality of that with installation a few weeks ago, and there were some questions as differences between those status. Like, so is there any resources with the right definition of, what deactivated versus decommissioned means, or if it's been replaced, does you put replace on the replacement item or the item that was replaced?
This is just a data field for reporting. So the question was, is there an official definition for all of these statuses? I have not seen one released that's kind of official, and it would be up to the agency or the user to change this list and define what it means and when to change it. So it's kind of up to you as the program leads to say, please do use missing, or replace this section and you still want it in Builder for some reason, I don't know why, use replaced as a holding point for the old equipment. Some people like to see old inspections and old condition records for things that have been removed from the building. This is one way that you can do so, but it would have to be defined and understood from a workflow perspective at each organization. At that point, I think it's flexible. Renelda?
Is there plans to include it in the API?
So the question was, is current status planned for the API? Yes. My understanding it is already available through the Builder API, but we just have to have a user need to throw it available to you.
Does this field impact the cost and scenarios?
So the question was, does your section status change cost? Does it change, will work be generated? So it does not change how Builder thinks or operates. So if you have a section that has been replaced with a CI of 10, it still is going to inform your building condition score. Yeah. So right now it does not change the numbers. It doesn't change how work is generated. In our, well, let me close this. Go back to the site. In our scenario custom report, we added the ability to exclude inactive sections. So in a report, you can always change how the data is displayed, even if Builder itself doesn't.
So you're going to have a different BCI and FCI in your report than what I would see in Builder.
But a scenario, it's really not in Builder, it's just it's a wish list. But if you want to exclude things from your wish list, you can do so. So this section status dropdown allows you to say, yes, I have multiple section statuses. Which ones do I want to include in my scenario report? So if I do have a replaced thing, or if I do have something missing, maybe you just leave it out of that report. It doesn't change your Builder FCI, it doesn't change your building BCI, but at least you can trim it from a report.
And I'm similar to a question online about, does it affect the roll-ups in any way?
Well, no. The section status does not change how roll-ups are performed at all.
And is that status reportable, sort of?
The status is able to be pulled into a report. As you saw, we modified the scenario report to specifically allow you to say only include active sections in this report.
And this one sounds like a setup. Thank you, Eric. Will status be added to flow?
Yes.
One last point for the room. Does CERL plan to tie business logic to current status so it can be included or excluded in roll-up calcs work plan?
It was requested. So as soon as that was available, and this is a year old, I said it would be great to not have inactive sections inform your BCI and be excluded from your work plan. So that was probably one of the items on the CERL backlog.
So I want to go, the question actually is just a cue back off of that one. Yesterday you showed us how to go through a way to change attributes got some feedback, so I don't know where I want to put it. And so some of those scenarios that you gave us yesterday on being able to take the paint out of some of our roll-ups and some of the
Yes.
conditions, So that doesn't come all the way back to this?
As of right now, this section status is just a reporting field. It doesn't change how builder thinks or plans. The attributes as well don't change how builder thinks or plans. It's just another reporting field. For now.
One more.
Okay.
Can you use or modify these statuses in some table?
Yes.
Add
So the question was, can we modify what these status options are? You know that, these catalog of component types are able to be changed if you have direct database access. You can change your building available category codes, your building available statuses, if you have the ability to change your database. So if CERL manages your server, you can say, I do not ever want to put in decommissioned sections as a status. That might lead people to put abandoned in place equipment in Builder and then hit that checkbox. So you can tell them to just remove it. If you own the server. It is a back-end change, yes. There is no library to manage current status. All right, and now the fun part that I don't expect you to read, but know that it's available and will be on the resources. CERL has been recognizing the increased usage of the API and fixing bugs. So we have lots of bug fixes, which is awesome. Yeah, we love that because this is the system that we use for a lot of our middleware products and our field assessment tool. All of this is available in the support site, so it might be a little bit hard to read, but if you go to sms.erdic.dren.mil, they have their release notes published. So if you go to SMS, Products, and Builder, and then scroll to the bottom, their support link will bring you out to release notes. So you can see from the news, all of the reported bugs were just scraped and edited a little bit for brevity from their published release notes. So certainly recommend keeping abreast of what they post here after you get a new version, or if they say, hey, a new version is available, they'll typically already have published release notes for you online. The help section seems to be lagging a little bit, that attributes doesn't have a help area yet, but I'm sure that will be forthcoming. All right, so that's 3.6. As of right now, I know that they are working on continual enhancements and bug fixes, but there's no formal description of the next scope out yet. So if you know something that I don't, be happy to hear it, because I always like to see what's coming next. And that takes us until the next presentation will be the virtual summit highlights at 9:45. So you have about 20 minutes, 19 minutes to take a break. We'll meet back here.